it can be kind of a bit all or nothing.
And like not overshare or like them oversharing.
The overshare.
Oh my God.
Please, God, can I have with my superpower of not crying? In fact, I'm happy to cry. Can I please, God, not overshare?
Hi there, and welcome to Am I Crazy Or? The podcast where I, Lisa Påske, businesswoman, entrepreneur, and general troublemaker, take on all the ways that society gaslight us into thinking we are going crazy. This season, we are tackling the perimenopause. They often call it the second spring. I think it should be called monsoon season. But I'm not doing any of this alone. In each episode, I'll be interviewing and talking to experts, specialists, and women going through it, giving you all the information that you need to make more sense of this chaotic period of your life. In this episode, I'm chatting to Holly Tennock. Holly is an entrepreneur and businesswoman who sold her PR agency in 2019 and then exited. She went through premature menopause at the age of 38. Not perimenopause, but actual menopause. She was also diagnosed with ADHD twice. Now, her story is very touching, and this was an amazing chat. Get the tissues, it's gonna be tears. Hello, Holly.
Hello, Lisa.
So lovely to have you on this show. I met you was it last summer?
Ibiza.
Yeah. Yes.
The agency hackers.
I know. So we met at a kind of conference in Ibiza, marketing for you. But it wasn't before I came back that I heard some of your story and then realized I had to talk to you.
It's very similar, isn't it?
It is very similar. It's kind of scary similar.
Yeah, you think you're unique and then you meet your doppelganger.
Yes, it's so good. But it's also so like comforting to meet someone that's gone through a lot of the same stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely. Makes you feel slightly less crazy.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to be talking about your perimenopause and menopause journey today. But first of all, at 38, you were confirmed as having gone through the menopause.
Yes.
That is considerably early. Can you take me through some of the things that happened before that? And what was your first symptoms, do you think, now?
Yeah, I have gone back now and thought about this. And I think a lot of the reasons that I sold my agency were because I was perimenopausal and had no idea.
So it all felt really hard. Yeah,
it was really hard. And I also had my second child. We'd moved to the countryside, so I wasn't a 20-minute taxi ride away from my office. So it sort of compounded. It was hard to see which one was the problem. But looking back now, I think, I had always been someone who'd been very resilient. I'd find things would go wrong, I'd pick myself back up again, sort stuff out. But that ability to not feel the lows as hard sort of seemed to have got up and left town.
That was the first thing.
But I didn't, it's only in retrospect. And,
yeah.
And actually, one of my colleagues who now is perimenopausal, and she's in her late 40s, actually I just went to her 50th birthday party, when I met up with her again, and I said to her, all right, I went through the menopause at 38, and she said, oh, wow, God, that explains a lot about how you changed as a leader during that time, which kind of broke my heart a little bit. And I was just, because I think, first of all, I knew that I had stopped being as strong. But, hearing her sort of confirm that was hard. Yeah. And I think she had her and, some other people in the team were like, what's happened to Holly?
Yeah.
This is somebody who would be like, it's fine, rally the troops, keep going, as you sort of have to do when running an agency. And I think I had become more, I just found that hit to back up again, just a much steeper climb.
Yeah. So you ran your own PR agency for how long?
So 10 years when we
10
sold.
years.
I started when I was 28.
Yeah.
And I sold at 38.
Oh, well done. But
yeah.
Shit. Yeah. It's so weird how similar our stories are. Because I started my agency at 30, sold it at 40, and I was falling apart.
Yeah.
I was like really desperately trying to figure out how I could just keep my head above water. And I could easily do all of the things that I was doing that in those final years. I could do them so easily the years before. And that was for me as well. I was like, but I thought it was me. I'm like, I am just not able to do things, and I am not a good leader, or I'm not good with people, or I'm not supposed to do this.
Yeah. I just remember, when we lost a client, just feeling like, it'd be like, 10 grand comes out of the P&L that month and you weren't anticipating it. It felt like the end of the world instead of like, oh, well, we'll get another one. It's fine. Keep going. I felt it. And I think and I think because I was lower on myself, I took a lot of stick from team members that I should have just been like, no, because I doubted myself. Yeah. I would have a conversation with someone and not remember what happened in that conversation.
Oh my God.
And I would be, a big thing about working in PR is being able to go, oh yeah, I know this person and that person, and this person needs to talk to that person, this journalist. I couldn't remember my mum's first name. So you'd be in a meeting and you'd just be like, it would not be there. And I just would think, I'm lazy, I'm not trying hard enough. I had a 1-year-old, it's baby brain. Yeah. All of those sorts of things, and it just, I'd always been, I remember seeing this picture of me packaging up all the presents to send to my husband's family in Australia. And I had separate wrapped birthday presents in wrapping paper for those kids, and then all different coloured, all perfectly wrapped, all beautifully labelled with the things. And I just remember looking at that going, who was that person? Yeah. Like, I could barely, I don't think I've sent out a Christmas card in 6 years. It's like I had a greater capacity, even though I had tiny babies and was running an agency at that point, then I'm only just getting that capacity back now.
Oh my God. So basically, you were 38.
Yeah.
And you had just sold your agency?
Yeah.
And this is when you then saw the doctor, or?
That's when my period stopped.
And that's when your period stopped.
But I would have been perimenopausal probably when I was conceived my daughter.
Oh, wow. And so at 38, when the period stopped, that's when you went to the doctor, because you're like, well, I'm not pregnant. Yeah. What is going on?
Yeah, but I went to the doctor 6 months after my period stopped.
Oh, wow.
So, and actually, it wasn't straightforward. And I think no menopause diagnosis, it's not, I mean, it is binary, but I don't know whether it's just difficult, or whether there isn't the research or the understanding there, because I was then, even though they'd said you'd had, because a year after, the technical definition of menopause is a year after your last period, that's when you hit menopause. So for me, that would have been that November when I was then, although my hormone levels said I'd been through it already. Yeah. But also I then ended up going and seeing a leading specialist in it. I saw a couple of specialists, and one woman said, "No, you've just got." So they went and looked, because the diagnosis of what it's called is premature ovarian insufficiency is actually what it's called, POI, when you have a menopause before 40, so I went and had a scan, and she said, "Oh no, your ovaries are still firing out." And so I was a bit like, okay, that's confusing. But they were like, "But why haven't I got any periods?" And they were like, "Well, I don't know." And then I went to see another specialist, and she said, "No, you've definitely had your menopause." And then another specialist said it's unexplained amenorrhea. So it's
unexplained what?
Amenorrhea. So it was basically no periods. It's
unexplained no periods.
So it's still but my hormones say so. Yeah. But it's like I eventually went and pillar to post, and I saw one woman, and she was like, "Look, stop faffing around. You've got no periods. Your hormones say menopause. You need to be taking big doses of HRT now, so you don't have osteoporosis in your 60s. And you need to start strength training, and you need to start, absolutely prioritizing your health and reducing stress." But I never, it's kind of just like one of those things that you kind of have to, I felt completely on my own navigating it, to be honest.
Yeah, I can imagine. And especially because you were in your late 30s. You were not expecting any of this.
No.
I wasn't expecting it in my mid 40s.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine how it felt for you.
And it's like none of your peers get it.
No.
Like, so no one has got it, you know, and they're all a bit like, oh, that's weird. Even my mum was a bit like...
No, it can't be that. Or...
weirded out by it, I think, because for her, she was a bit like... because my mum's only 20 years older than me. She was just like completely freaked out by it, I think. She'd only just recently gone through it.
Yeah, wow.
And it was, you know, I remember, I think one of the hardest things about it is I just felt like really unsexy. I felt like an old woman.
Yeah, I get it.
So,
but did you have reduced libido as well? Because that happened to me when in the first bit.
I think anyone with young kids and a stressful job has a low libido.
Yeah.
And I think what's really interesting is I think as I've gone through the hormone replacement therapy journey, you know, getting the estrogen right, getting on a decent dose, like 75 milligrams, 100 milligrams, like toying between those two and seeing what felt right. You know, not the sort of 10 milligrams they initially gave me in a spray. So pushing for that patch is so good. And then getting the progesterone right, because the tablets made me feel like I was taking depression tablets, not antidepressant tablets. So getting those like more localized through the coil was great. But the big thing is testosterone gel. And I think a lot, you know, there's this idea of like, oh, it gives you your libido in that way. It actually gives you your drive for life. Like it gives you for me, that is my CEO in a bottle. Like that is me there. Like I've always been quite alpha as a woman. You know, I used to be head door at university. It was funny, as a picture on LinkedIn me recently, I'm sure I was taller when I was in my 20s. I looked tiny and there's like these 30 massive guys. But like I used to do mixed martial arts. Like I like to, you know, I'm tough. And it's like, and I think actually what I lost when I was going through that early menopause and sort of feeling despondent and feeling lost as a leader is like, that's where my leadership energy comes from. It's like from resilience, from physical, like feeling strong. And I think what you know, everyone talks about the estrogen, like for your testosterone levels drop considerably around there. And when I replaced those, it was my drive for life came back. Yeah, you know, it's like my, you know, so I can do hard things in a bottle. That stuff. Like,
I like that. Yeah. I can do hard things in a bottle.
Yeah, it is. It's like you will grip that out of my dead hands at 95. You know, like,
you're not taking the testosterone.
It's coming into the other side with me.
Yeah. No, I don't. And I think people are completely unaware of how important testosterone is for women.
Yeah.
And this is why you see it. Like now I have done so much research and I've done so much work for this podcast. I realize just so many things like women suddenly getting really skinny legs and looking very different when they hit the late 50s or 60s. The muscle mass just disappears. And testosterone is so important for your muscles.
I mean, muscles are just so important. Like, I think it's like I am, you know, and that was a big thing that I promised myself after I finished my year out, had my back surgery, you know, and realised how long.
Oh my God, back surgery!
Realised how long I had, like, how much damage I'd caused myself by sitting down for too long, doing those late night. You know, for me, with the way my brain works, is if it doesn't need to be done now, then it doesn't get done. Which for me means, okay, well, that's fine. The pitch is tomorrow at 9 a.m. I can stay up till 6 a.m. and write it. And, you know, I would create an amazing pitch deck with that level of pressure, but it would mean, like, I'd sit in a chair for 18 hours and do it. And And so I think it's, now I go to CrossFit, like, minimum 3 times a week. I trail run. I'm so strong, and I think that is as well, like, such an important part of your like reclaiming yourself and refinding yourself.
Oh, I love that. I totally agree. I think this is also an opportunity for rebirth, and maybe that's why they call it a second spring, although I do think monsoon season is more appropriate, but it does allow you to reclaim who you are. And
I think the person who wrote best about this was Miranda July in All Fours. Have you read that?
You're the second person to recommend it.
Oh my God. So she's amazing. Like, she's a novelist, but she also does like pastiche. She does art. She's kind of like, does loads of, she's an artist really. And she did this sort of social, she did a sort of a social collection of women's voices post-menopause, and she included that in like towards the end of the book, because the book is about a woman and the sort of sexual transformation that she goes through in her early 40s. And then at the end of it, and it talks about that sense of, I've given everything to everyone for such a long time, fuck it, this is my time now. And I think like that really is like where it's like that sense of like, my body is now my own. And I think it's like taking your body out of service and saying like, it's now yours, enjoy it. Because I think it's like, we were not brought up with the same thing that women are now. Like I was brought up with More magazine of how to give men pleasure from when I was 14.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I did not know anything about, you know, I had sex, you know, when I was like, you know, really young, like 15, 16 with like guys. I wasn't interested in me and myself. It was all this kind of like, I don't know, like we were just pre-sexualized, and then, but not in a way that actually was anything about our own enjoyment.
Yeah.
I mean, God knows what it's like now with porn. I mean, we were before that, but I think we're hopefully coming out the other side of it. And I think finally women are learning to be a bit selfish.
Yeah. I so agree. And for me as well, like coming into my 40s and then having been on this journey, in fact, it made me cry because at New Year's on New Year's Eve, this past New Year's Eve, I wrote like a kind of a vision board. Like I always make this thing of, like, instead of doing the typical resolutions, I wrote what I want for this. Yeah. And because I've been through such a transformation with realizing I'm perimenopause and having all, you know, divorce, selling my company, etc., I've been really reflecting over what I want, and I've really struggled with that all my life. I've just been taking care of people. Yeah. And you know, on the airplane it says, put your own mask on first before helping others. That I've had that on my vision board for years, but I have not been able to do it. But this year on New Year's Eve, I was like, this is your time. Yeah. And I really connected with the words, my turn. Yeah. And this is now my turn to do what is good for me. And I love that whole like reclaiming your own body and you know. And
I think there's something like, almost like, so you can feel the judgment both in myself and because you think, well, you've got young children. It's not your turn. And it's like, actually, the one thing that is going to help your young children the best, boys and girls, is them seeing you look after yourself. Yeah. And you look after yourself, you will look after them better. Like, and you know, you sit in your own power, you don't take shit from anyone, you hold your boundaries, and you love them fiercely. Like, and that is about putting yourself first, because they are the most important people to you. Yeah. But there's something that's like so judgy, both in ourselves and so much in society, about when you become a mother, you are literally like, and then that is the end of you. Yes. You know? Like, it's like, and it's like, and wasn't that life nice? Yeah. And there you go. Yeah. And then when you come out happily ever after, you know? And it's like, whereas with guys, it's like their careers continue, they do, that's just like a little thing, oh, isn't that nice along the road? And it's just like, it is for women, it's like, you just judge then, you work too much, you know, it's like, I remember, you know, my mother-in-law left me like a book, like Little Miss Busy on the side, and laughed about it. Like, it's just like, you know, it's just like,
all that, like, it's and also what is so kind of heartbreaking, because I had my first daughter quite young, so I was still in my 20s, and then worked through my entire of my 30s, had my second daughter, had my daughter while working, and then sold my company, and then had a divorce. And then I went into perimenopause. I was like, you bitches.
When's my break? Yeah, well, that's what I felt. I was like, I felt like, oh, thanks for that. Yeah. I've been robbed of my 40s, you know? And it's like, I felt like in some ways when I had that at 38, I just skipped through to 50.
Yeah. But there is hope, and I do feel this is why I'm doing this podcast in the first place, is because I didn't know any of this shit, and also it is entirely possible to get back on track, because I am for sure fitter now than I have ever been. I'm stronger, fitter. I take care of myself. I am better with boundaries. I'm not sure I'm the best. I still go like, yeah, sure, I'll do that. And then feel exhausted, but I'm better. And at least now I'm trying to do something for myself.
Yeah. I think it's, I think first of all, you just have to sort of untie your ovaries from your sense of self-esteem. And I think it's, reading on there's the Daisy Network, which is set up for people who go through premature menopause. But a lot of the content is for girls who sadly go through it like 18, 19.
Oh my God.
And, there's, and it's the statistics are 1 in 100 women will go through premature ovarian insufficiency before they're 40. And so it's quite low.
I think that's a lot higher than I thought.
Well, I think 1 in 100, when you think about, but it's quite, and actually when you think about, and statistically it wipes 10 years off your life expectancy. Now, I got quite obsessed with that figure.
Oh, no.
But, that is before HRT. So I think it is your body, I think is my body thinking it was older than it was.
Yeah.
It was, or whether it just, and that's the stress. So they're finding more and more women, I was stressed. And I am not somebody who is good at saying, oh, I'm stressed, let me look after myself. I remember my coach, I had a coach from probably when I was about 35. I spoke to Nick Govia, who, I don't know whether you know her, she has ADHD. She runs a fantastic agency called Blurred. I really looked up to her. She had worked in PR, and I saw her talk about selling her agency. And I said, how have you done? And she said, talk to this woman. So I talked to Nick Blee, and she became my coach, and she was amazing. But she sort of would sit me down, and often I'd be in total tears, and she would be like, you're just going around the M25 at faster, and that would be my go-to. I'm so overwhelmed with work, everything's, I'll just go faster and faster, and it would just be like, I would almost get like this superpower fallacy. I would sort of think, I'd almost go like slightly psychotic and think that I'll just get up at 4 a.m. because I can, and I would, and I would just push and push and push until, I don't think I went to an agency networking event, and there was a guy at the front, and he had sold his business, and he was talking about how he went around the world with his wife afterwards, and blah, and then he was talking about the problem with men's mental health. I could have stabbed a fork in his arm. I was getting so wound up by almost like the compassion that he had for himself. Yeah. And at the time, I had a colleague who was in my business who was sort of pushing back quite a lot, and I was finding like some of the things were quite hard work, and I got so annoyed, and I was trying to keep it in, but it's obviously on my phone, and I was just annoyed. And someone talked about, how's your agency going? And I think they could see that there were tears behind my eyes, and I was trying to keep it all in and be quite professional. And this was definitely like when agency networking was just much more professional. And this really lovely woman took me out afterwards and said, have you ever heard the word burnout before? And I said, no, I hadn't. Again, this is like 6-7 years ago. And she said, I think you're burnt out. And I then looked into it and started realising, and that's when But it was like just the great undoing, really.
And so, I honestly, we have such a similar story. So I guess there's one more thing here that you just realised that we both just realised, and that is ADHD.
Yeah.
And how did that come into the mix? Well, it was always there. You just didn't know it.
Absolutely.
You could explain a lot.
So it's really interesting because I think, so I've not been diagnosed with ADHD once. I've been diagnosed with ADHD twice because I didn't believe them the first time. I double checked that diagnosis. So I think I didn't really know anything about ADHD until my son was diagnosed with it when he was 6, and he's now 10.
Okay.
And when I sold my agency at 38, I went in, so I had read up about it, and I was just like, oh, tick, 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 did a few online tests and was like, wow, this is a thing. Like, it wasn't all over Instagram then. It just wasn't a thing. And, it was the naughty boy, can't sit down illness. And that wasn't me at school. I was an absolute geek. And so I then walked into a therapist office when I sold my agency and I couldn't sleep. And I said, I think I've got ADHD. And she went, oh, most ADHD is trauma. So we then spent 2 years unpacking a load of trauma, EMDR, she was like, you've definitely got chronic PTSD. Went through all of that. Didn't really change anything about how I worked. I didn't have a horrible voice in my head driving me on anymore, which actually I quite missed because it's quite helpful actually getting you to do. There's something about that hard voice in your head that, even though it's horrible and can burn you out, without it, you're kind of a bit lost. Anyway, she said after 2 years, she's like, I don't think you do have ADHD.
Did you get a refund?
She's still my therapist. She's great. Oh, but she's like, yeah, you definitely have ADHD. And she's like, we've unpacked everything, but you're emotionally unregular, up, down.
Yeah.
And so I've now been on a journey to try and fix that. I'm super sensitive to the medication, so it's not easy, but I'm trying some new ones. But I think the biggest, obviously that sort of, I think those ADHD symptoms became harder when I was selling my agency, because I was then also in another company working for someone else as somebody else's boss, and it suddenly became much harder to hide my crap under the table, because when it's your business, if you screw up, you can hide it. And when I'm talking about, like you can, I don't know, like, somebody bulls something up on a team account, you can take someone out for a big drink. No one needs to know. Or you lose an account on your head. Yeah. And then you can sort of replace it or that sort of thing. However, when you're then accountable to a board and a senior leadership team, and then they can see some sort of, and the sort of feedback was consistently like, we love your passion, be less emotional.
Oh my God.
Everyone was like, can you just be a bit less emotional? It's not your business. You don't need to care so much. But we love the passion and energy that you bring. I was like, it's part of the same thing.
I know.
You can't, I found that so hard to unpick. And it's just now I understand, after I left, I went and worked for this fantastic psychologist, Dr. Paul Brereton, and trained in strengths and teams and team development, because I saw that was an area I could really do with improving after being there. I understand now about how you give feedback around, it's about people's strengths, and we love your strength of, strategic mindedness. Do more things there. You're crap at doing this bit, so give that bit to somebody else. Don't try and improve an area of weakness, or try and use a strength to overcome that. So for me, when someone says can you dial up your emotional control? No, I'm actually trying my hardest, believe it or not. I'm trying so hard right now. And it's like,
and that's the really hard thing, is the emotional dysregulation that is so hard to control. It's also part of the fuel that will make people believe you, or make them buy into what you're doing. So they want it, but they just don't want it pointing at them. But also I think the super interesting thing with this is, obviously you were already going through perimenopause but didn't know it.
Yeah.
And one of the most mind-blowing things for me is just how big of an impact the hormones have on ADHD symptoms. Yeah. So no wonder you felt so frustrated and
yeah. And one of the and everyone has a different response to being overwhelmed, or I think, tears come easy to me. Me too. As a child, some people wish they could fly. I wish I could not cry. I would dream of people of not crying if I was upset, because then people wouldn't know how upset I was. You know? And it was, and so it's not like I went around crying. at all. Like no one did. But I think, sometimes if, we were having a quite a heated conversation perhaps about the earn-out figures or about something that was quite difficult. Yeah, like, like I've seen you, like when it's emotional, I wasn't crying big, fat, ugly tears. It would just, the tears would prick behind my eyes, and I would then need a second to come back to myself and sort that out. That's not weakness. It means that's where you're passionate, you care.
Yeah.
And I think if I had known more about strengths then, and I think if I was like, okay, well, controlling your emotions is really hard, especially when you're really enthusiastic as well. But maybe like dial into that strength of strategic mindedness. When I think about that, and empathy for other people, like, and how they're, especially if other people feel uncomfortable around your emotions, then I'm able to go, okay, I get how to do that.
Yeah.
I absolutely, it's like by using other strengths to manage your emotional, I can. If someone says to me, it's so funny, and I watch now and I work with people and they suddenly go, okay, yeah, I can get that. It's like a different neural pathway. It's like hacking your brain.
Find another way.
Yeah, find another route. It's like, okay, that road's closed.
Yeah.
Find that route.
But to be honest, that is like, I often describe that as how it feels like having an ADHD brain. You're just like a professional labyrinth walker.
Yeah.
Whenever you find a dead end, you're like, I'll find another way.
Yeah.
And so using that part to actually figure out, although I would say that it also helps a lot. For me, it's helped a lot realizing that that's how my brain works, and it's not me.
Yeah.
So the diagnosis of ADHD for me had a huge impact of how hard I was on myself. Because I was such an asshole to myself. I'm like, you stupid cow. Why are you crying now? Why can't you keep it in? Why do you always get angry? And it was the constant thing. And I just had internalized it as thinking, I am bad. I am angry. I am emotional. But now I realize that a big part of that, I am emotional because I definitely connect with emotions really quickly. But that isn't a wrong thing. And now I know that I'm quicker to get to emotion is because of how my brain works.
Absolutely. It's just like giving yourself permission to be you. And I think I still struggle a little bit with putting people in neurodiverse, neurotypical buckets. Like a big part of what I do now is I work with StrengthScope as a tool to look at people's brains, and it gives me a blueprint of what energizes them. Everyone's different, and you can see when someone's neurodiverse. Pretty much you can guess from the StrengthScope, because their emotional control is always super low, and there'll be some other things around it that you might be able to tell. They'll never have a high common sense.
Yeah.
But I think what's really interesting is around that wheel there are like 32 other strengths, and everyone's different. Everyone is diverse. But I think what we've said is these are the attributes, these are the strengths that make good factory workers in the industrial age. And so that is good. And then these are the weaknesses that are problematic, too emotional, you're too over the top, and those are the ones that are too much. And so then we've labelled them bad. But I think it's like, and then we take medication to try and make ourselves better like that. And I kind of like, I think it's, I think it isn't a sliding scale. That's the other thing that pisses me off. I think people are like, oh, everyone's a bit autistic. I'm like, I kind of think the whole, for me, I think the thing that best explains it is the farmer mindset versus the hunter mindset. You need both to survive in a society. You need those people who are highly fucking wired and are going out there and are spotting opportunities to hunt, and they'll get them and they'll have that mad dash of energy, and then they will need to collapse for a bit. And then you've got that person who's going to go out in the field every day and they're going to sow something, and they're not going to get frustrated that it doesn't come up for 5 months, and they're going to slowly tend to it. And that's the farmer. You need these different brains. Is one better or worse? No. However, we have labelled them such.
Yes, so I agree with that. Okay, this is interesting because we have different views, and I love that. So I totally agree with that, and I love how different brains work, and I think it's really useful to know and it's also really useful to know in all kind of relationships.
Yeah.
Whether you're, I'm guessing for me, I think that's also in like romantic relationships. You kind of get attracted to the opposite, and then
date
you're like,
me doing psychometric.
Yeah,
I'm like, I need to know how your brain works.
Yes,
I
exactly.
need all of these psych profiles before we can progress to the next level.
Oh yeah, me too. I'm like, I ask questions and they think it's just a question. I'm like, no, I am reading you. But the fascinating thing with the ADHD brain and the useful thing, I think, in terms of getting a diagnosis at least, because I have had a lot of, it's weird, after getting diagnosed, I was surprised of how many people would agree I have the traits, but were pushing against of me having a diagnosis.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I was like, why are you so adamant that you don't think diagnosis is a good idea? But then what I realize now is that the reason I think the diagnosis is so important isn't for everyone else or for anyone to put you in a box or for you to put yourself in a box. It is for yourself to experience the difference and understanding your life looking back in a different lens. For me, the best description of it is like, before, I feel like I looked at my life and I looked at everything that happened and I was putting a puzzle together, but I was putting the puzzle together with the picture side down. And I was like, fuck, this is really hard. I just don't like, well, this fits here. And it was almost like, a lot of it felt like guessing. And then after diagnosis, it's almost like I could see the picture. Like it was something that, like just seeing the picture really helped me be able to get things a bit faster. And also the biggest thing for me was how it felt in my own head and how I treat myself, because for me, such a big part of it, like I've contributed my way of being to so many different things. Like, oh, it's because you had a traumatic background. It's because your mum was alcoholic. It's because you're from Norway. You're Norwegian, so you're just like this. And then they meet any other Norwegians and they're like, well, that's not true.
They're not a lot like
They're not like that. They are very straight and not this loud. And I had like, and I guess this is another way of making sense of myself. But this is the thing that has made the most sense, because after getting the diagnosis and then being able to read and like talk to people that also have I realized there's so many things that happens. And like, it's one particular one, like rejection sensitivity. Rejection
sensitivity disorder. Oh my God.
So yeah. And by just knowing that that's the thing and that I might experience those like really small things quite strongly has helped me be able to create some like boundaries. Like I don't really do, like I try to avoid group WhatsApps. Because for me, even the weirdest thing, like I'm in a group WhatsApp, I put something in it and no one comments or like it, I assume they all hate me and I will go for days thinking about it.
Oh my God, my book group chat over, like, I would constantly be like that. Oh my God, why have I said that? Like, no one's even noticing.
Yeah.
I think actually the selling my agency and moving into a new agency, that was where I experienced that the hardest. Oh my God. Like if someone, and genuinely people did not like me at that agency from day one because of what I was represented. But instead of me going, wow, that's weird behaviour, good luck to you, I was like, oh my God, what can I do to make them love me?
Yeah.
And I got obsessed with it. Obsessed. And it's like, I can't just say, you don't like me, that's fine, I'm okay. And that's the big thing that I would say I'm learning.
I think for me, I go the other way, which is equally harming, because I also saw my agency and I felt like an alien. Like I swear, like I walked into that place and people scattered. They were like, fuck, there she is. Do not engage. She is weird. And I felt so out of place. And this quite often happens with people that have ADHD, is that we tend to create our own companies.
Yes.
Because we can then create the world that we needed.
Absolutely.
And do the work and the speed and being the boss makes a huge difference to that. But as I sold and walked into that very corporate environment, I was so different to everyone. But I kind of wish I had a little bit more of that. I want them to like me, because I adapted more of like, fuck you then. And it was so aggressive. So then, you know, because they didn't understand me, I was like so aggressive in like, well, it's not my problem. Like,
I wish I had a bit more of you.
Oh,
put,
really?
put us both in a bag and shake us up.
I call mine fuck you smiley face. I just did it the wrong way around. So I said fuck you first, and then I was like,
no, I definitely, I think it's the traumas. And the other thing is, you're sort of talking there, is like trauma responses as well. Like,
yeah.
And that's often the thing where you have these sort of overlapping circles. I don't know if you've seen someone put like a PTSD circle down and then overlay it with ADHD. And then actually you have quite a different ADHD to someone who's pure ADHD or someone who has ADHD who has ASD. Like if you have PTSD plus ADHD, it just presents in a totally different way.
Right.
And I think that's for me as well why I never felt particularly at home in the diagnosis, because lots of people would describe things and I was like, no, that's not me. The one thing that I found weirdly reassuring, or like, okay, this is less, I think, you know, the sort of Daily Mail, the Times are like, oh, it's just another thing. It's not real. It's sort of made up. Is I have facial blindness. So I've always really struggled to remember people's faces. Oh. Really struggled. I can never tell a picture of who is Madonna. So because she looks
well, that's because she changes a lot.
She changes a lot, but I couldn't ever recognise. So, and it's like,
oh, that's so.
And when I had, it's like all the mums at school kind of look the same, they're in the same situation. I cannot tell the difference between 90% of them. And it freaks me out. When I took ADHD medication, it was like, why is that a problem for me? Like, I can totally tell that person is that person and they have that kid and that. And I was like,
oh, that's so weird.
Wow. So like,
but that's so weird. I don't have that at all.
Exactly. So it's like, but I read up about it and it's like, for me, it was like putting glasses on. Like I suddenly could go from being blind on that to doing it. And then as the medication wore off, it would come back. So I think it's different for different people. Yeah. And I think that, you know, there's some, I've always been, it's funny to be like, oh, you've got ADHD and everyone else has got ADHD around you. Yeah, because I'm attracted to, like, you and I can talk at the same pace. Yeah. You're not going to bore me. You're going to keep it bang, bang. We can jump from one topic to another topic, go right down the hill on one, come up here. And it's a fun conversation because that's how our brain works, like squirrels getting nuts. Yes,
squirrel is, that's actually what I used to refer to myself as. I'm like, I'm just a bit squirrel. Yeah. Because that's...
And that is the thing, I think, like, part of the reason, like, now why I do, like, the other business that I run, Wilder Work, is because you see all these different ways that our brains work reflected in the way that different animals work or different plant species work. Like, all of them have evolved to work the environment and get what they need out of that ecosystem in different ways. And we don't say, oh, that type of type of animal is typical and this is non-typical. We just see that, like, the squirrel working in that way is great for adapting to this environment. Oh, yeah. And I remember hearing about beavers, a big part of rewilding, and this guy was talking about the fact that this beaver, he was like, they create this amazing ecosystem that allows everything to flourish around it in a way that they're like ecosystem engineers. And the guy was like, it's so weird with beavers. They like come out, they chew a bit of this willow and they get seemingly bored and go and do something else, and then they're off doing something else, and then they're doing that, and they're coming down here. It's so totally random. It's like they're not just going, oh, there's the willow closest to the water's edge, we're just going to do this systematically and then this one to sort of conserve energy like most species would. Like, they just do it in a totally random way, and in that way they create all these lovely pools and different speeds of water for the fit, and it creates the breeding grounds for all these animals to live. And I just thought, hell yeah, there's my justification for existing, in that actually, like, and I just thought, I think it's something we would do at Wild Work, is we'll do a course on all beavers have ADHD. Yeah. And actually it isn't like, just because you don't understand why that person is behaving that way doesn't mean that the knock-on effect of them behaving that way isn't going to create something amazing that you hadn't anticipated.
Oh, that's so lovely. I really like that. That's so true. And like, having different ways of thinking and different minds is so important for the world. Yeah. If we're all the same, it would be very bad and not very useful.
No.
So
Yeah, I mean, we're depleting the resources as quickly as we can at the moment. I think if we can consume them and be as diverse as possible in what we want and need, far better. I think we've just had this like mechanized, industrialized approach to humanity that's meant that all kids are taught in exactly the same way to perform exactly the same thing. It's insane at exactly the same times. And then we say, oh, there's something wrong with that kid because they can't do it. I mean, I know this is over talked about it, but can we just take a second to just appreciate how insane that is?
Yeah, that is bonkers, isn't it? And then they somehow make those kids feel like they are somehow not good enough or that they're not clever and taking in information. I don't know about you. You were saying that you actually you loved school or you liked school.
So I was an absolute swot until I was about 13, 14. So I was the only child in my year to pass the 11 plus. I moved down from up north, didn't even know what the test was, sat it, passed with flying colours. Then I absolutely loved went to an all-girls grammar school, absolutely loved that. And then I became naughty and I became very dopamine seeking at sort of 13, 14. When those hormones kicked in, I became, I wanted more. And I think that now I understand that through the lens of ADHD. I think I masked heavily until that point. I felt very geeky, and I then sort of wanted. And then I started drinking quite a lot at 14. So I think I also had that squirrel brain, had a lot of angst, and I just found it a lot easier to make that quiet with alcohol.
Yeah, I read some statistic actually this week about how women with ADHD, how the impact of perimenopause, but also the hormones in teenage years and how that represents, and girls with ADHD struggle a lot more with mood disorder and doing things for dopamine in those stages.
Yeah.
And then apparently women with ADHD are 10 times more likely to get postnatal depression.
That's fascinating.
That's crazy, isn't it?
I think, it is a vulnerability. You're less able to control your emotions. I think that's a fundamental part of ADHD. You're more led by your emotions. And if you're more led by your emotions, you're less able to regulate, calm yourself down, not follow those racing squirrel thoughts, not follow those black holes of thoughts that you get. It absolutely, it's, if it was the other way, I'd be completely surprised.
Yeah, that's so true, because that's kind of one of the superpowers and the kryptonite of ADHD. Because if you're interested, or if there's something in your mind that hooks onto, you drill down.
Yeah.
And if that is a negative thought, I drill down.
Yeah.
And so being able to change your perspective and be able to and that's really hard in those periods. I've always struggled with PMS and I think actually I had PMDD, so I had very extreme the week before my periods, always. In fact, when I was running an agency, I used to have a Darth Vader stress ball I put on my desk so people knew it was the week before my period, because it was that bad. I'd be like, my head would spin around 3 times and I'd be like...
Yeah. Oh, I wish my mum had had one of those. See, I never really noticed my periods, I have to say. I never really went up or down with them.
Yeah.
I never really had problems with them. I think I never really tuned into them. I was on the pill from quite young, so I think I was always quite, numb to them in a way. But I think so. For when the hormones hit more around, I don't think I didn't go back on the pill after Elodie. So I think then it was quite confusing.
So that's interesting. So you were on the pill from teenager to when you had your
first son.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
And then after that, how long?
Because I think I was put on it at 14 for your skin, which is just so damaging. So I was probably on the pill from 14 till 32.
What was the skin problem? Was it acne?
Yeah. So not even bad acne, just spots.
Yeah.
Like normal teenage skin, they put you on the pill then.
That is ridiculous, isn't it?
So I never really knew myself in that way.
Of course. And
it's just basically like being pregnant. It's like, it's a chemical cosh on your hormones from 14.
And then, but also it might have I wonder if I had inadvertently prevented those ups and downs before your period, because you wouldn't have a real period.
No, you weren't having a normal period, so I didn't have any sort of PMS or... No, I never really felt it.
Oh God, I feel like a wormhole of research going on from my brain now.
There's an enormous amount of research about how harmful that is and how actually it affects your choice of partner, everything.
Yeah, that to be honest, I have never been able to be on the pill.
Yeah.
Because when I tried to go on the pill in my 20s, I was admitted to hospital because my 80% of my body was covered in this rash.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
And so they said you had an allergic reaction to the pill.
Right.
But they did not explain to me what in the pill.
No.
And so I never went on the pill.
Yeah.
And now I realized that it was the progestin. And apparently, and a previous guest explained this, women with ADHD particularly react very badly to progestin, which is the synthetic progesterone.
Explain why I reacted so badly to it when I initially had it in tablet form.
Yeah. And so, but now, so I was never on the pill, but that meant that I did have very big ups and downs in my cycle, apart from when I was pregnant, like the middle few months, I was so calm. And I was like,
oh my God, bring me back that time.
Yes.
I remember that.
Like, I don't know who I was, but I was like, oh my God, is everyone okay?
The second trimester of being pregnant, I got so much work done. I remember talking about it in a coaching session. I was like, I need some second trimester energy.
Yeah.
And that must have been when our hormones were just that perfect soup level for us. Like, I spent my head down the toilet for the first 20 weeks.
Oh yeah.
And then coming to that, I was absolutely more than capable of doing anything. I felt so strong.
Yeah,
right
me
up
too.
until probably 36 weeks.
Yeah. I was speaking at conferences like this pregnant, and I was like, got this.
I was doing my MBA looking like a beauty school dropout. I did get preeclampsia, so I literally look at those pictures and I was swollen.
I also had preeclampsia.
Yeah, interesting.
That's very weird.
Yeah.
There's a lot of but why? That's so weird.
Because it's possibly caused by just working too hard when you're pregnant.
Yeah, that could also be. I took
it a bit easier the second time.
Yeah, me too. But apparently you're more likely to get preeclampsia on the first child than the second.
Oh, okay.
My daughters, I think probably they're both neurodiverse, and I didn't know I had ADHD for so long. I'm already thinking, shit, like it's all makes sense, but how much damage or how much confusion would have been for them. And then I started, so my mum died in 2021, and she was an alcoholic, and she died of liver failure. And now I'm seeing all of that differently, because she was like your mum, very, very capable. She was like, she got a job in publishing, she started a clothing brand, she ran a magazine that she just set up. Then she had all these initiative for the unemployment office, and she was like amazing, but so like chaotic and up and down and super depressed. But she was sent away when she was 13 to foster care because her parents couldn't deal with her because she was so naughty.
Oh,
and
bless her.
And now I realized that, like, it's only in the last year that I realized that's probably what it was.
Oh, God, yeah, she'd have hated herself.
And so she was sent away, and then she met my dad when she was like 17, 18, and she had me when she was 19. But all of this, like, she started drinking really heavily when I was quite little.
Yeah.
And she was trying to get herself...
Just quiet the pain.
Yeah. And for all those years, I was just so mad with her for being so manic and crazy. And now I realize, like, she was really struggling, and no one picked that up.
No.
And it's only now that I realize that, oh shit, I have ADHD.
Yeah.
Maybe this was it. That was it. That's why she was struggled so badly, and why she just could not keep her shit together.
No.
Like,
And when you drink with ADHD, oh my God, it is just like squirrels on crack.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know what your relationship with alcohol is now, but I have to not drink, really.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's when I think for me, a big part of the problem, it sounds really, I'm like, is ADHD self-shaming.
Yeah.
And for me, alcohol just equals self-shame. Like, the shame spirals come down deep and hard. Oh my God.
Yeah. Like, I have so many, like, I tend to do, I drink, but I don't get drunk. Like, I never get to the bit where I'm drunk. Because I'm so, and also all my friends are like, you're the only person we know that goes quieter when you drink.
Yeah.
Because I am holding on like, don't fucking say something ridiculous.
Yeah.
And for me, I also don't like drinking really with people that I don't know.
Yeah.
Because again, I'm like, oh, I don't know why
On the next day as well, like, oh my God, like the whole Ibiza trip, like I went into like a spiral of like, oh my God, what did I do? What did I say? What did I, you know, I found that really hard afterwards. Sort of took myself off for a big hike for a couple of days. But actually, it's navigating those grey areas, I think, where it's like professionalism and like where you have to be very professional, but then also you want to really, everyone's also being very sociable. I think is quite hard when you have ADHD. It can be kind of a bit all or nothing.
And then like not overshare or like them oversharing.
The overshare.
Oh my God.
Please God, can I have with my superpower of not crying? In fact, I'm happy to cry. Can I please God not overshare? Like, it's just like, and it's really interesting because I've wrestled with this because it's, because a lot of my therapy and a lot of the impactful part of my therapy is around focusing around being vulnerable. And I think it's a word that is used a lot, or maybe not used, but it's very different what being vulnerable is to what we think it is. And I think being vulnerable is not, sort of being vulnerable at work is not saying like, oh my God, I'm having a really tough time with your team. It's like, it's saying the hard things like that you might not say, but it's saying the hard things that you don't know the answer to and you care about the answer about. Yeah. So it's like, if I was to say to you at the end of this podcast, how do you think I did? Like, that's quite vulnerable, because I really care about the answer and you're going to tell me the answer. And whereas the not vulnerable thing is to not ask. But whereas if the people think, the vulnerable thing is saying something that's really deep and hard, but that's not necessarily vulnerable because you're not then expecting a response to make it better. It's like, for me, that has been a real crack in my learning about relationships and how to do it. And because often I think that oversharing is we think we're being vulnerable, but we're not, because we're just sharing something we want to get off our chest. We're not sharing it in a way that we really care about the response of someone. And it's often not with people that like we're that close to, like. So I often would be more vulnerable with a stranger on a train than I would my husband. Like, and he would not know half the things about me, really, that are really important to him understanding me, but I would share with a girlfriend over a glass of wine. Yeah. And I think that's where we lost, I think a lot of intimacy, because actually the people that I cared about, the people that they're the people they should be sharing this stuff with, and actually they're going to tell me a response to that because they're actually in a position to do it because they're that close to me. I would never share it with. I don't know whether that's your experience. Absolutely.
And also I think I'm slightly obsessed, as you can see, neuroscience and psychology is definitely my bag. My obsession with, I realized that the reason I don't have any problems with anyone not liking me if I don't know them. I once got in a Twitter spat with Piers Morgan. I had 3,000 Arsenal fans calling me a so-and-so.
See you next Tuesday.
And I didn't have any problems with that. I didn't feel upset or worried or anything. But if someone that you know, and that's the vulnerability, is like you care about the answer because you care about them and they care about you. So someone that are close to you saying, like, giving you the honest truth is terrifying.
Yeah.
I would quite easily.
And that's where the RSD kicks in, right?
That's when it's honestly, and
when people say like, feedback is a gift, I'm like, so feedback is a punch in the guts.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care how hard I work at it. Feedback is a punch in the guts. And I'm going to have to like go and take a day afterwards to recover.
Yeah. And that actually is like been the hot. I can even give you detailed descriptions of all the times that this has like punched me, like and it doesn't go away from my memory. It's like those things are like. I remember the first time I was like probably. I just came to England. I'd been in a pair for like a few months, and one of my Norwegian friends came to stay with me, and we were in the pub, and she said, "I need to talk to you about something." And she looked me in the eyes, and she said, "It's really frustrating when you interrupt me, and I'm fed up with it. Can you really try not to do that?" And my world fucking broke. Yeah. And I could still feel it. I remember exactly what it looked like. And she didn't mean it in a way, but I still feel like, ugh.
Yeah.
God, thinking about that.
I can see that.
Yeah.
Like it's what you heard was you're mean. You don't, I don't love you the way you are. And it's all of these horrible things. Yeah.
You too much is the thing that echoes in my brain all the time. Like you're too much.
It's like, I reject you. It's like what you hear in that. And that it's like a cold, icy dagger.
Yeah.
Whereas if actually she cares about you and she just wants to share vulnerably about that and improve your relationship.
Yeah. But I did not see it like that. I don't think I really talked to her after that when she went home. It's been 20 years. Sorry, Inga.
I remember my mum saying to me, like, she took me out and had a similar, like, heart to heart, and she was like, I can't remember what she said, something like, I wish I wish you wouldn't just keep saying that things are good, or you always seem to look on the more positive side, or something like that. And I was so confused by it. I was like, give me a bit more context, but I felt it as, I don't like you. I don't like your demeanour. It was awful. But what as I now understand is, I get loads of energy from being optimistic. Like, I'm an optimist. I always see the silver lining. And I'm really enthusiastic about that because of my combined... And my mum doesn't get any energy from being optimistic. But, like, it's like... And that is often the lens through which the things that drain us are the things that energize someone else. And we have to be careful when we're giving feedback. It's like, it tells you more about the person giving you the feedback than the actual person. So
That's so true.
Yeah.
And then but being able to do that, and this is also where I think it's complex with the ADHD, and if you have ADHD and trauma, is that getting your brain to not go from there to like the end of the universe in 1 second is really hard when you're in the feeling.
And it's what's so hard is, I think people with ADHD are attracted to other people with ADHD.
Yeah.
So then you're often inevitably like in a marriage or a relationship or friendships with other people who struggle in the same way, who are hyper-reactive, who struggle to regulate their emotions in that difficult time. So actually you've then got the option of having these difficult conversations and both being really reactive to each other, or just slowly just not really having any difficult conversations at all.
Yeah, that's so true.
And it's very sticky, like ADHD and ADHD people, like it's great for friendships.
Yeah.
That's so
but true.
We really need the other side to balance us out a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I think my last two relationships have definitely been both ADHD people. I now can see quite clearly.
Yeah.
And it feels really kind of like really almost addictive because it's like so exciting. Yeah. They can keep up with your brain.
Oh, you're bang, 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 bang each other's like...
my ex-husband was like very, very neurotypical. And apparently one of the things that I said to him the most was, get there faster. Because he would talk so slowly. I was like, okay, can you get there faster?
Can you just record that voice note and then I can put you on 1.5?
And that's so delightful when you meet people that can keep your temper and you're like, oh my God, woo, woo, woo. And then you're exhausted afterwards because you haven't seen any people.
You have to be like really silent for a while.
And you're just in like ADHD coma where you're just like, oh God.
Yeah. I think for me, I would run a mile with somebody else with ADHD now. Yeah. I just think like I need it's just like that someone, I'm happy to be the ping pong, but I just, it's like actually, and that's why teams with diverse strengths
are so
important because, you need that ping ponging and then you need the grounded and then you need this. And what's interesting, I think, is when you think about teams and businesses is often people say, we all have the same values. And like, well, actually your values are super informed by what energizes you, because you'll often have like, we have a value of like passion or something like this. Like, well, that means that probably you have low emotional regulation and super high enthusiasm. Like, so your values are intrinsically linked they to your strengths and what energizes you. So I think it's really interesting when people talk about values in businesses and being aligned, is it doesn't intrinsically then lead into being diverse.
Yeah.
So you have to but I think it's important to realize that values also shouldn't be cohesive. Like they should be rubbing up against each other. Like you should have one value that takes you in this direction and another value that takes you in the opposite direction, because every decision is going to be about finding the grey area between those. And it's like trying to find your points of friction and where you want to land in the middle of that, both as an individual and a human and as a business, I think so interesting. And that's why I get really into all this juicy stuff, because and I think our brains get that. And I think, and then as a couple, ideally you come together and you both have a shared set of values that represent both of yours, but are going to be different and you're going to rub up against them. Like I have this big value of adventure that's just so important for me to be doing fresh and different things. And then a big value of connection. And actually they're quite different, because like connection keeps you in the same place, steady, connected to people, and adventure is fresh, new, different stuff. And so it's about wrestling between those two, and it's about going, well, which, and I have two other values, and it's like, where in that little, if I draw myself a Venn diagram, what decision best meets all four of those values?
Ooh,
and I don't think people really get how hard values are and how to navigate them. And that it is a constant dialogue and a wrestling and a getting comfy with grey areas and making difficult things, and living a values-aligned life, I think, is so, so helpful for ADHD, where we're like, I love it, I hate it, and it's like, and it's actually just finding a life that is like, it suits you, is like authentic, like, so if we use the word authentic, like what does that mean? Like, it's you, it's the only life that you would choose. And it's like, yeah, I'm kind of get it, and it's like, what is that stamp on the world? Like my friend was looking at a house the other day, and it's by quite a well-known person. She showed me the obituary, and she'd gone around and looked at this lady's house, and she was in her 70s when she passed, and the house was just her. And you're like, this is a woman who's been unapologetically her. Everything about it spoke about her, and I was like, that's the imprint that I want to leave. Like this is she'd like gone through 2 divorces, and then she'd ended up having this house in Tufnell Green. It was just so, like every room had this like imprint of, she was a famous sort of psychoanalyst of her, and I was like, that's where I want to land. And I think that's our chance at 40s now, is to go like, where do I want to land? There's no one in the way of getting there. Like, do it.
Yes. I love that. Oh, that's a good way to end it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's been so good. I could literally talk to you all day about all of this. I think we might need to do a second episode when we get to the ADHD.
I'd love to,
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisa.
That was good. Hello again. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoy that. I would really love to hear any feedback you might have or comments, or maybe you have a suggestion to a topic we should cover. You can get my email on the website or send me a message on Instagram. Please do follow the podcast and maybe even leave us a 5-star review. It really helps to get the message out. See you next week.